There's 20 people registered, David. You might want to give it a second. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's one.
Thank you all for coming tonight. This is our third Maple Haven meeting. Hoping it's the last one, I guess, but just in case you're wondering why it's here and not at the fire station, we thought the acoustics are better in this room, and certainly the Zoom system is much better in this room. We are having troubles with the electronic broadcast in the fire station for the other people that came to the other meetings. You probably remember that. So we figured here, we're used to this system, and we just want to make sure. We had a bunch of people that signed up on Zoom, so we just want to make sure that everybody gets it. So good evening. City staff is here. We also have the assistant mayor doing a killing here. And Peter, how do you say your last name? Somsich. So as far as staff, Director Peter Rice is over to my left, monitoring the computer system. Traffic engineer Eric Eby is in the yellow shirt. We have our design engineer here, Mark Batchelder, and Tyler Reese is our young engineer, and he's been assisting us with message boards and notices and all that sort of thing. So, and I am Dave DeFosis. I run the post-road construction and the things over here at DPW. So we have a brief presentation that we just want to run through kind of what we've been thinking since what was our last meeting? April. So since spring, we've been kind of tossing back and forth how we should approach this, and we have some suggestions that we're going to lay out here tonight, and then we'll take feedback after the presentation. Okay. So that being said, why two? And we'll take the questions from Zoom after we finish the presentation, and then we'll take the comments from the audience. That's the way we're going to run. So that being said, we talked a lot last time about when sidewalks are actually warranted. So Eric's going to talk about this first slide or two, and then I'll take back over.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Eric Eby, the traffic engineer for the city. So on a street like this, it's considered, the city of Portsmouth has a complete streets guidelines, and this street is classified as a neighborhood slow street. So it's our desire to have traffic traveling at speeds of 20 miles an hour on the street. And along with that target speed, we also have desirable widths of roadways and facilities for pedestrians and bicyclists. And on a roadway such as this, it's what we call our preferred treatment is to have a sidewalk. However, based on the volume of traffic, which this graphic shows, and the speeds that they're operating at, sidewalk is only a potential item. It's preferred. It's not a required. This is a national standard as well. So what we're seeing is that because we have about 200 cars a day on these streets in this neighborhood, and they're usually not going too fast, although we do have some concerns with that on Suzanne Drive and the cut-through traffic. And we are looking to address that issue. Based on the volumes and the speeds that we're seeing, sidewalks are not required. They are a preferred item, but not required as far as standards nationally and in the city. So I just want to make that clear that this is not something we're doing because you have to have a sidewalk in your neighborhood. This is something that's being done because this was brought to the city as saying it was a desire from the neighborhood, and it is a preferred treatment for a neighborhood street like this. So that's where this chart comes from.
So based on what we heard at the first two meetings, we had really good consensus on these three bullets, which are, we really want a safe crossing so the two neighborhoods can talk to each other and people can cross. And people were pretty much in favor of a rapid flashing beacon similar to the one that got installed at the end of Banfield across Ocean down there. And we have several of them on Middle Street, and there's one on Woodbury Avenue. So we have a couple of them in the city, and we have really strong consensus that we want to do that. So how we do that is we have to do an engineering drawing, and we have to apply it to the state for permission to put in a crosswalk. They will, Mark will draw up an engineering drawing that shows that there's adequate sight distance, that the speeds are acceptable. You know, you can't have it on a 55-mile-an-hour road, for instance. But Ocean Road doesn't have that problem. So we think there's going to be no problem. But we have to apply and get a permit to put a crossing in. So we're willing to do that, and we want to do it. We also want to incorporate the traffic calming in the areas of concern. So the areas of concern that we most heard were the cut-through traffic that happens from Habibi to Ocean Road, that cut-through traffic. So we are proposing to put in 2 speed tables in that zone, the first of which you would be more or less not right by Habibi, but just beyond it, so that you could see if you're in the parking lot of the restaurant, you can see the speed table, and you know that after you go through at least once, you'll know that there are multiple speed tables, and those will slow you down enough that it would actually be quicker to stay on Lafayette Road and take a right. So that should, we hope, head off the problem. So those will be of the type, just like Banfield Road, and there'll be 2, just like Banfield Road. We also heard that a connection would be great to the multi-use path on Lafayette Road, which we have also committed to work on. So the path on Lafayette Road is in the CIP, the state and VHB, I believe, is working on the plans. Is that true? CMA is working on the plans to do a multi-use path all the way down Lafayette Road, which will finally, after I don't know how many decades, finally create a bicycle and pedestrian friendly link up and down Route 1 so that people can get from A to B without having to take their life in hands. So when that path goes in, we are committing to link up the neighborhood, possibly on the side of Putnam's, with the new sidewalk, so that as in that, because that's in that same area of concern, so that people can get it from the neighborhood out to the path and then go whichever way they want to. Next slide. So what we did here a lot is that there's a total lack of consensus. At least that's the feedback that we're getting. Because we're hearing from everybody. What side of the street to place the sidewalk, and that we either would need sidewalks at all. So those are the 2 things that we still need to get through. And we heard about, we talked about possibly putting a speed table on Winchester Street too, but I guess we heard more or less that people on Winchester Street weren't interested in that. Is that, you remember that? You remember how that felt?
And we did a speed study, and it was showing that the speeds were, right about 25 miles an hour.
So they're in the speed zone that really wasn't.
You wouldn't get much of a benefit from the
Right,
speed.
so it's only people in the neighborhood that would have to go over it. The speeds aren't crazy. We did have one wild speed that I remember that we picked up on. Remember that, Tyler?
Yep.
So we did have that one speed, but in general, traffic is behaving on Winchester. There seems to be a lot of support for possibly putting in another capital improvement plan to put sidewalks or multi-use path down Ocean Road. So to do that, you have to apply to the capital improvement plan. Now, as it so happens, right now, this period of time is the time that residents can apply and put their ideas down for the capital improvement plan. Those ideas are being accepted, it says on the website, we just looked it up for the meeting, until September 30th. It says October 15th in another spot, but the actual form says September 30th. So you have to the end of the month. If that's something that you're interested in, we would ask you to, as residents, fill out that form. That gets submitted to the planning department, and then it gets vetted through the city staff and the planning board. And that's how it gets added. If there's enough interest in it, it'll get added to a CIP project, and it'll eventually get funded. So projects, that's how projects come to be. So you have to ask for them. It gets vetted through staff, it gets vetted through the planning board, and then it gets, if it makes all those steps, it gets added to the capital program. So if you're interested in that, and what that would do essentially is link Maple Haven with the bike trail that is in the process of being designed near the railroad tracks used to be. So from there, you can get wherever, because there's no guarantee. The state, and you heard me say this for people who have been here before, the state moves in geologic time. They're like glaciers. So a lot of times that multi-use path that's on Route 1, that might take another 10 years to build. The multi-use trail might be built in 3 or 4 years. So hedge your bets, right? It's always better to have multiple things going on. So if you're interested in that multi-use path as a project, we ask you to go out to the, we actually had that. We actually linked it up earlier, and we could actually show you after the meeting where that link is to that form. But it's on the city's webpage and it's under planning. And there we go. So there's the actual form, and you can't quite see it. Can you erase the? There's City of Portsmouth, and then it's under the citizen request form right there. And it's under the planning tab. Okay. And then we'll go another slide. Okay, so this slide shows you where we're proposing the speed tables. They're the green stars. So here, and somewhere in here, touchscreen, fancy. So somewhere in here when they come in, and then somewhere in here midstream. We wouldn't put one here. That way the neighborhood could come in from Ocean Road. Don't have to. And in order to get the crossing in an Ocean Road, we've talked multiple times, they have to have a sidewalk on either side. At this point, we are proposing to put in a smaller section of sidewalk right here and a smaller section of sidewalk on this leg of Suzanne to get you into the neighborhood as at least an interim step in order to have that crossing. And that way, any traffic coming in from Ocean Road, the immediate area by the intersection, you're on a sidewalk, you're not in the road. So I've already been through what these are. I think everybody knows what the flashing beacons are. And then at this point, it is our plan to remove the old sidewalk. Now, we've talked about a little bit about consensus and how we've had really a lot of people on either side saying we want our trees, we don't want sidewalks. We've heard that we don't want wide sidewalks, pave the sidewalks that are there. And we've heard put in concrete sidewalks and we want them. So we've heard all these things, and we hear them more or less equally. So what we're suggesting is that as a first phase of this project, we're gonna do what we told you we're gonna do. We're gonna apply to the state, get crossing in, get those 2 segments of sidewalk built, put in the speed table. That's our plan. And then at this point, we're asking the neighborhood to come to a consensus one way or another and let us know really where we go. And would I phrase, am I phrasing that? You think I'm phrasing that fairly? And what we really have is we're just getting feedback all over the place. So we're getting email is one way and email is another way. It's just. Any questions?
Sure, you want to talk about next steps?
Sure. All right, so the next steps, as I said, we'll finalize the design and secure the easement. We need an easement from that one house that's on Maple Haven South. The one that has white fence, the little yard is low on the side of the road. We're planning on putting the sidewalk more or less where there's asphalt now. So we're narrowing the road a little bit, not going into their yard, but their property line right now goes into the pavement just a little bit. So we need an easement from them to do that. We plan on advertising bids over the winter. It'll take 3 or 4 months to get permission from DOT anyway. And then we will build this. Hopefully we get bids. We will build this next year. So I'm going to take questions from the web first, like I said. We'll take all the questions. From the web. So anybody that has their hands up, we'll allow you to talk and you can ask your questions. John?
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, John.
Okay, thanks for taking my question. I'm at 41 Suzanne. Pleased to see that the speed table is going to go right outside my house. Happy about that. Question about the consensus. You've asked us to provide you with consensus on the sidewalks and what format to follow. Who's in charge of this? Are we going to have a neighborhood vote? Do we have a neighborhood captain? How do we express this to you to make sure that everyone's voice is heard?
So obviously each neighborhood is unique. And what we've tried to do in the past is, respect a supermajority, 75%. It's what we consider consensus. We don't, you're never gonna get 100% unanimity. So usually the neighborhood takes the lead on this and works, through their group, their neighborhood committee, does the legwork. The city is here to support and to implement what folks want. We are not here to impose our will and vision on you all if you do not want that. It's important that the residents take ownership of this because it is your neighborhood. It's not the city's neighborhood. If it is the city's neighborhood, it's your neighborhood you live in. You need to feel that it's been fair and that who have been included in the discussion. So I know Kathleen is part of the neighborhood committee group, and they provide assistance as well. But typically, that's how these things get done. So if there was a clear safety issue, if there was a clear reason outside of that I could point to from an engineering standpoint, we could make a very simple decision. But there is not a clear driver for this. As Eric pointed out, it's not a state requirement. It's not a guidelines. It's not required. It's only if it's desired that we do this. So it's not a simple answer, John, but that is really what we would expect.
Okay, thanks. Really, not to overcomplicate, I just want to know who's in charge here. Who do I talk to? You said Kathleen or someone? I don't know who that is.
I would look to your neighborhood leaders and who, if you feel that you wanted to step out and start a committee or group to do that, I would, that would be how it's done.
No, but is there currently a committee in existence already? Is there already a leader who, or are you asking us to
There's a
form one?
citywide neighborhood group, a citywide neighborhood committee that you could reach out to the, it should be online, that lists the neighborhoods. And the city manager's office could give you contact on who to reach out to within that. I'm not aware of the point person, whether there is one. Kathleen, I don't know if there is one right now. So I don't believe there is one right now, but so if the neighborhood wants to create something, that's, you know, incumbent upon you all to do that.
Dax?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening.
I think somebody already addressed this. I'm at 17 and you would, at 17 Winchester,
Thank
and
you.
you had mentioned putting a small section of sidewalk in where the Ocean Road crossing is proposed to Suzanne. And
Yes,
right now I'm looking at the drawing sheet C102. And it's showing that the proposed edge of pavement would shift, widening the road by 4 feet. And I was wondering if you went with a temporary, or not temporary, but a
I
partial
think
sidewalk.
that drawing is outdated. Can you see the screen?
I can.
Okay, so this is the new drawing. And can you see that the new sidewalk that we're proposing is more or less placed on the asphalt that's there. It's over the edge just a little bit, and there's no widening on the other side of the street.
Okay, and is that a temporary measure, or are you doing so with the, I don't know, with the plan to continue that sidewalk, or is that still up in the air as far as?
That would be part of the consensus that we were just talking about, but this is the measure that is required so that we can get permission to put in the crosswalk across the state road.
Okay, thank you.
John, did you have your hand up again, or is that, you already,
Sorry, I meant to put it down. I'm all set.
it's okay.
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Why don't we take,
Okay, so not, oh, we got one more.
Hi, how are you? Oops, sorry, I'm too close to my husband. I'm at 17 Winchester Street, and I had one more thing, maybe just for John's information. On our side of Maple Haven, Sarah has been doing a lot of work. So possibly you would want to hook up with her and connect so that we can discuss the whole project together as a neighborhood.
All right, Sarah may or may not have gotten volunteer. Okay.
all right,
Okay, so I don't see any more hands on Zoom right now. So we'll take audience questions. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, good evening. My name is John O'Leary. And I live at 50 Nathaniel Drive. Excuse me. And I've lived in the Maple Haven neighborhood for 46 years. I lived 25 years on Suzanne Drive and the last 21 years over on Nathaniel Drive. One of the reasons I'm on Nathaniel Drive is that Maple Haven is a special neighborhood. We lived there, we were looking for a larger house. We found one and we frankly didn't have to move out of the neighborhood. So Maple Haven is pretty special to me. One of the things that I've done with being there for 46 years, I've seen a lot of changes. All of them, most of them good. You know, we have a very, very vibrant neighborhood. Vibrancy means that there's a lot of people who are active. A lot of people walking. Yes, and one of the other things that's happened over the last few years is we've had a large influence of young families with strollers, etc. So one of the things I'd like to mention is that, and those of you who know me know I've been involved with projects with the city for many, many years. And one of the things you have to do when you have a project like this is come up with the overall objective that you're trying to achieve. And in my mind, the overall objective should be safety. It should be safety for the people who are walking in the streets, for the people who are pushing strollers. So when you look at these various options, I would just ask that you look at those from the objective, what promotes safety. And yes, as David's mentioned, many of the things they talked about do promote safety, and I'm happy to see those. But one of the things we also have to think about, and it talks about the safety for Ocean Road, which is very important. It also, I mean, it was kind of interesting, a couple of weeks ago, I was coming down Suzanne Drive and a car cut me off, went right through the neighborhood and out onto Ocean Road. Unfortunately for that person, they were driving a company vehicle, so I could call the company. But anyways, the problem is that, we have to find ways to make it safe. The other thing is, and it's not just, the people cutting through. One of the things that's happened is that the playground has become a wonderful asset for the city. So you have a lot of people, young parents walking their kids to the playground. We need to think about ways to make it safe for them. We also have it being used for a lot of athletic events. Last spring, there were baseball teams practicing there. Well, the problem is some parents want to go see their kids practice and they come flying down Suzanne Drive. And the speed bumps won't have anything to do with that. So what I'm saying is that some of the stuff we can't address. We can't have police there all the time. So if we can't do that, what can we do to make it safe for people? And there are some areas, for instance, down around 15 Suzanne, around that corner, cars come flying around there and the line of sight is not all that good. So those are the places we have to think about. Maybe there needs to be a sidewalk there so that people can have the safety of being out of the road. Because at the end of the day, when you take away the existing sidewalks, which I can certainly understand, then basically you're moving everyone to the road. And if you're going to do that, you need to find ways to make it safe for people. So my only message is when you look at something and say, should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? Look at it from the perspective of we need to keep people safe. If you do that, then you'll end up with a good project.
I'm also hearing that there are hybrid solutions, not necessarily all one.
Again, I'm not offering a solution.
Nope.
What I'm doing is I'm just, as someone who's been through these.
You are volunteering for the committee, right?
But those are, and I say, those are the things that are important. And it may not be, picking up on what Dave said, a solution that works on Wallace may not be the solution that works on Suzanne. Because traffic patterns are different on those streets. So you have to look at, so a hybrid, if that's the term you want to use, certainly is something that should be considered because we don't want to ignore a place where there is a safety concern because we don't want to do that same thing on all of the streets. So that's just my comment.
Understood. Thank you, Doc. Anyone else want to volunteer for the committee?
I'm the only one on that side of the road. So my first question, I think you already addressed with that latest drawing update. So the Suzanne side of the short section of sidewalk that is planned, that's in line with the proposed crosswalk, right? So it's not like there'll be a jog where the crosswalk and then it'll cross over.
No, it's one of those.
No, okay. And second thing I wanted to say, agreeing with everything you just said, I walk the neighborhood frequently. We both do. We walk our dog. The state of the current sidewalks means that we walk on the street most of the time. That's not typically an issue. Where it does become an issue for me is in the winter. So in the winter, there's next to nowhere to put snow, so it inevitably gets piled on the sides. You get snowbanks that are built up, so then the visibility around corners gets even worse. The sidewalks aren't cleared because, as you guys talked about in the first two meetings, the equipment can't clean the sidewalks. They're too narrow, they're in disrepair. So the sidewalks are essentially useless at this point anyway. My own personal feeling on it, echoing what John said about being able to navigate the neighborhood safely on foot. I advocate for having sidewalks to be able to walk the neighborhood, to be able to have the city maintain the snow side of things, you know, to be out of the street, out of the car's way. That's my personal opinion. As to what side they go on, one side, the other side, both sides, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference to me, but I agree with John 100%. Having the ability to get out of the street where it's built for cars and to have a safe place to walk for pedestrians that's important to me.
Chuck Ray, 21 Wallace Road, so one of the roads that probably doesn't see the most traffic, to be honest.
I didn't mean.
No worries. You're right, no, it's true. I have a different traffic pattern. I'm in the middle where I go through. So, but I drive through the neighborhood a lot. I'd like to echo what they just mentioned. When I look at sidewalks, it's about safety. Now, we're not walking down Route 1, obviously, so it's not dire and it's not required, but ultimately there's a lot of different types of people walking around the neighborhood, and having sidewalks will make it better. I'd also like that, actually, I shouldn't say having sidewalks. We have sidewalks. I think we should recognize that we have sidewalks on both sides of the road, in almost both sides of the neighborhood too, right? So sidewalks exist, but like Bill mentioned, basically not usable only in a certain section where they're maintained. Having wider sidewalks would make it better for anybody, strollers, wheelchairs, people elderly with canes. It just all makes it more manageable. It can be maintained in the winter, and I think it just makes sense to have them for any neighborhood. That's why sidewalks exist, to have two modalities, dual modalities, people walking around, people riding bikes, people driving cars. So I think it makes sense. I think in the first couple of meetings, you also mentioned that sidewalks were already allocated as part of the CIP, correct? So the monies are there.
Yep.
There's no extra taxing, it's not gonna increase our taxes. We're not talking about a huge project. It's already allocated. Plans were already there in place. I think the April meeting, you had updated plans with like less sidewalks that seemed to account for everything that people were talking about. One of the issues brought up was removal of trees. I think that obviously makes sense. We want trees in our neighborhood. However, a lot of the trees on Suzanne likely will get taken down by the power company and go through power lines. So I think something to be conscious of. Also, trees can be replanted. We have a great needs of trees committee that can replant trees that have low roots, not ruin the trees, right? That's new sidewalks that get replaced like the current sidewalks got. So I think that's all part of the consideration, letting the town do what you guys do, and come up with a plan to put sidewalks in some way that minimizes impact to the neighborhood and make them sense for everybody, right? I don't even know if I really need them that much, right, myself, but I can see them benefiting most people.
So just one point of clarification. Capital monies are set aside for sidewalk activities. If a project is not moving forward, there are other sidewalk projects that do come forward and monies get expended. That doesn't mean that more monies aren't set aside over time. So you're correct, there are monies currently there, and that's why we focused on any sidewalks here. However, there are other projects that aren't clear in terms of consensus, in terms of moving forward. So the monies may not be there immediately. Once you get consensus, it may take a year to gather the monies. But if the neighborhood is clear that they want the monies, the council will support the monies. Every 2 years, monies get set aside for sidewalks.
Yep.
So it's not like it wouldn't happen again. I just want to be clear that we don't hold on. We don't say, okay, this money is specifically for this. It's for sidewalks in general. And there's a backlog of sidewalks that are identified.
Okay, yeah, I saw the CIP had like several neighborhoods identified. We were listed for a couple of years. So does that mean that, because when we met in March, April, we were planning to potentially start in the fall, but obviously there was some consensus concerns. So does that mean that if we get consensus, let's say we got consensus next week, hypothetical, would that mean money's available or no? No longer?
We know we probably have the monies now. Okay. Because we're still working on finalizing details in the Panaway Manor neighborhood. So, you know, the monies, we have monies from both sides. We have monies we're doing State Street right now, because there was clear consensus to move forward with that. But, you know, I'm just saying, it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
There could be other things. that
yeah,
pop
things
up.
happen.
Right,
It's
and then
just-
things happen, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the economy is a turmoil, so.
Yeah.
Prices that we were talking about this spring are now exponential, so we may not have enough money to do it right now, even right now. So we'd have to go out to bid. We really don't know what we're gonna get if the economy goes down substantially. Construction prices might go down. So
So, this has been the issue, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, but there's residents that don't want sidewalks, and there's residents that do want sidewalks, and there's residents that do want sidewalks, but not on my property and go back. We had the second plan, remember how, we had the first plan, then, we had residents go around and ask people, and then the second plan came about, which the sidewalks were on different sides. So, when you're talking about consensus, I don't know, the shift, like, I really think every resident should have a say, but how do you, like, you either say no sidewalks or sidewalks? But you know what I'm saying, like, I totally agree, it has to be a resolution. here.
that's why we're really looking for stuff up.
Right, like,
Tell us,
right, does
what
it
you
have to
want.
go, right? does it have to
we'll
go
pick
around?
what side of the street it goes on.
But I think the neighborhood has to have, like, before we go forward, like,
Yeah.
either say, like, I'm just picking on you, so the captain goes around, right, the captain goes around, does the captain then go to every resident and say, listen, would you like sidewalks or not want sidewalks? And that's it, and then we come back to you and say, listen, 80% want sidewalks, 20% don't. so here we go.
Or we don't need sidewalks everywhere, but we do want them to the park, or we do want
See, then-
them
Right, so
here,
then that's,
or, you know, we just need some sort of consensus.
I would start with the last plan that we had out there. There was a lot of thought that went into it.
Right.
And start, as a starting point, I would suggest starting with that. You know, it's difficult, I understand, but at the end of the day, I think the hybrid solution is probably, you know, the best approach.
just another thing about safety, because you know where I live, we don't have stop signs. And so we're talking about, you know, curbing the traffic and stuff like that. In front of my house, there isn't a stop sign in front of Lori's house. there's not a lot of stop signs coming in off of Ocean.
Well, I
Is there a
think
stop
that's
sign
one
there?
of the things.
Right, that's not, right, it's coming on Ocean, coming on Ocean, right.
There
yeah,
isn't one
it's
coming in off of.
No, there isn't.
There is.
There is.
On our side, there's no one.
I mean,
So, hold on a second, so
It's not on mine. No, but not on your Ocean.
So let's focus on, just hold on a second. Signage is a different thing.
Right.
We can, you know, Eric can review, you know, what signage is out there, and if there's improved signage, we can look at
I'm
that.
just saying slowing traffic.
Oh, I understand, but stop signs are not used to slow traffic, they're used to control traffic. So they're, you know, Eric can better describe.
Okay, I just wanted to know that.
They're used when you, when there's confusion over.
Can you pull up Winchester Street? 'Cause I think I can get you consensus on one street. Raise your hand if you live in Winchester, because that includes some of the people on there, and I'll give you consensus. And what I'm finding is,
Sarah, can you?
I'm Sarah, so I live at,
I know, but.
but I can stand
this-
here.
I know, but this is not. We don't want you to get up and.
I'm not going to, but I want to be able to see it.
I
I
understand.
don't want
what
to sit back and have no idea what I'm putting in.
Yeah, but wait a minute, just because you live on Winchester, I drive Winchester every day. So,
Let me back up and I'll talk about what I'm talking about, and then we can discuss it, because
Can you do it
there
from,
are
can you
bigger,
do it from your seat, please?
can I do it over here just so I can literally see?
Sure.
I'm just
Are you,
trying
are
to,
you talking about this section of Winchester? or are you
no,
talking
the
about-
full section.
All right, you
Can
don't
you
have,
mark it?
I don't have that loaded, so it'll take me a second to pull that up. But, you know, it's just a matter of, you know, we're here to present,
And
and
I'm,
we get input
all
from
I'm
you all, I
trying to
just
do
want
is
you to
be
get
able
up.
to
and-
read,
I
instead
understand,
of sitting back
I
there and
appreciate
trying to
that.
squint and,
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Let me just pull it up.
all right. So the whole point is what I'm saying is that it's what's getting missed in a lot of this, in the lack of consensus, is if you go into the history of Maple Haven, it's Winchester Street never had a sidewalk. And the street on the map is different from what's there. So everybody lives and it's a straight shot, right? It's not supposed to be a straight shot, they're supposed to be a curve. So the only way for them to put any kind of sidewalk in is to disproportionately affect different properties, right? So the issue on Winchester Street is they can't legally take unless they go through eminent domain and certain properties.
Tyler, where's the old drawings?
My point is that I can't look at my neighbors, I am not the most affected, but I can't look at my neighbors in the face and say, I want a sidewalk, but you're gonna lose half your drive. He's about to hire a fence and all his plants is now going to be the road. And I'm not willing to stand here and say that I need the sidewalk, so you have to suffer for it. And if everybody in the neighborhood is willing to do that, then that's fine. But part of this needs to be understood that what we're trying to do is retrofit a neighborhood that was never meant to have 5-foot sidewalks. And the consensus is everybody wants that, that's fine. But go back, look at the maps and realize that you're retrofitting. And every time you retrofit, it causes a problem. And if we're okay with the problems it causes and disproportionately to different people's properties, the city's doing nothing illegal, they're taking what is legally theirs, but it is disproportionately affecting people's properties. So I'm getting a curb in front of my street. He's getting his fence and his plants moved. 17 is losing a significant amount. Their bushes are getting taken out on the corner where they historically, it is sold, the family had been there for decades, where they normally park to get off of Ocean, that will now be a street. They won't be able to park there. 2 doors down from me, 4 houses in a row have what would be a 2-car driveway. You put the sidewalk in place, you can only place 1 car. That's Winchester's problem. So those of us in Winchester are here because
On the file.
every positive has a negative and vice versa. And this is, I'm unwilling to look my neighbors in the eye and say, I want this, and therefore you have to deal with the consequences. When you start moving fences and bushes and everything else, we need to have, I think, bigger discussions. And if you don't live on Winchester Street, there's no reason for you to have to study the maps. The same as I can't help people on Suzanne traffic because I don't live there. So that's part of the conversation, and I think there's been lack of conversation until recently when enough of us have started walking around trying to get input. Because if everybody wants something, then that's what we should have.
So I think one of the things I'm seeing with the lack of consensus is that in reality, we're being treated like one neighborhood and we're 2 separate entities that overlap. So I think, you know, when I have talked to people, that seems like a definite feeling on that side, on the south, that there's a lot of concerns, rightfully so, about property and split of that. It seems like the people on Maple Haven North more pushing towards, we do want some are pushing more towards like getting to the park and certain things. So I feel like, are we looking at trying to make sure both neighborhoods are voicing equally their concerns? Because I think what's happening is so many concerns are being shot. So maybe what we need to do is we need to get South's concerns written down, North's concerns written down, and then iron out from there. Because it just seems like, do you get what I'm saying? Like,
I think that's part of it. I think there's a few things to this. So I asked them to pull up the map, so I'll just quickly look at the map. So you're at, see again, I'm trying not to be blind to that, but all right, so this is the corner. So if I'm at 26, purple house, you can't miss me. So 3 in, right? There's not really a curve there if you're driving down. There's now going to be a curve. Across the street, so you guys are 25, right? Across the street on the map, because of what the history of how Winchester Street is, he's now gonna have a significant amount of driveway taken, his entire fence, and by moving his fence, you're moving significant landscaping, etc. Pellegrin was at 17, picking out all of her bushes, and again, really doing damage to how much driveway they have. It has to do with where your garage is in relation to the street. So then if you continue going down, and this is where it's disproportionate because it legally has to be that curve and there isn't a curve. There's barely a curve if you stand there. So certain people are, Jody, you are barely affected, but across the street from you, you have houses whose driveways will be significantly impacted. So I think if you want consensus, of the residents who live on Winchester Street, there is virtually 100% agreement that we do not want this plan. You can put something else in, we can figure it out, but if you want consensus, there's a reason enough of us showed up because, and again, if you live in the north and you think that you want these, be willing to talk to the people who are, you're very much impacted and tell them why. And that you don't mind that things are getting moved and there's an I get it, there's the legality of it, but when this neighborhood, those roads have been in the past 80 years, there's kind of an expectation that probably what it's gonna look like. That's not going to with this project. So I can end my piece, but there's consensus on Winchester Street. Certainly not
You've already gone once.
100%, but
So
that's,
I'll start
if you want consensus, and I think people just need to stare at the map enough, it's also become apparent to me that depending upon what you do for work, looking at these maps is not everybody's forte. So you may have to ask, you may have to stare at it. From walking around, a lot of people went, I didn't look at it, I don't know how to read it. So that's, I think, a hard part, because how else are you gonna?
What is that map? Is that map of the?
That is the original map from this spring.
So what the shaded area is.
So let
Very
Sarah,
good.
please, you know, you've made your point, thank you very much. Let my staff answer these questions. You know, you made your point, thank you.
Okay,
All right, let me just kind of go down the series on how we got to this plan, because there's a series of 3 plans. The one that we first presented, which did not show going onto the other side and encroaching into that area. That was the very first plan, and what we heard back from that, because what that plan also showed was the narrowing up of the entrance into Winchester Street. Now, what we got from the respondents from that meeting was, we don't want it to get narrowed up. In which case we said the only way in order to get a sidewalk in and not narrow it up would be to push to the other side. But our first drawings did not show that, specifically because we did not want to encroach on other people. But from the feedback that we got, that's what this plan came up with. And again, these are just conceptual plans. There was nothing completely designed about them. They were just conceptual to get the conversation starting and get public feedback. So that's where the second one came up. And then that's where we had the second meeting and we got that feedback from the public that, you know, with people calling about the concerns about doing that. So that's why this latest drawing that we are presenting now, which just shows the sidewalk coming in shortly, goes back to the idea of narrowing up the road to 24 feet just as you get in order to get that sidewalk in and not encroach on the opposite side. So that's just where the series of the plans came from. And again, they were from feedback from the public.
Okay.
Just a couple of things if we could. My name is Jack Holden, I live at 115 Daniel.
Okay.
So I'm right on the corner of Daniel and Winchester, so I have a sidewalk.
Yep.
On two sides of my house, actually. The existing sidewalk has been there since the original construction. I've been there for 15 years. So just some logistic questions. Tonight, you're just looking for consensus on that, the latest plan, right? Which is the short section of sidewalk on both Winchester and Suzanne. And to go forward with the requested DOT.
Yeah, we actually, this is based on the impact, this is our plan. We are moving forward with this. This is a hue and cry for you all to not do it, because we felt in past meetings, this was a consistent interest, and so we do not feel like we're stepping out on a limb to put in speed tables and make a connection across.
All right, so
that's clear, that's a first step for you all.
All right, so you're not looking for consensus. You guys are going forward.
We're moving forward with that.
I personally think that's a really good compromise. You guys get it down to something that seems to be, at least it's taking most of the emotion out of it, I think. So nice job on it. Thank you guys for having me. Now with that, you are gonna, the road will get a little bit narrower on that end of Winchester, right? Are you gonna put no parking signs in for the road, maybe? Something to think about?
Well, yeah, by state law, there's no parking within 30 feet of the intersection. So, yeah, we would put the signs up. If it's a problem, then we would put the signs there prohibiting parking.
Yeah.
But 30 feet is only to here.
Yeah, it's, you know, just over a car, 1 or 2 car lengths.
Now, That might be a good idea. The speed table in Winchester, that's not in this. plan,
That's right.
right? You guys took that out. Okay, it's just
Because we did a speed study and it wasn't one.
And the CIP process, it sounds like maybe the sidewalks are not technically part of the CIP, or maybe it is.
Well, for the CIP process, it's like, we put aside money every 2 years, or request money from the city council every 2 years for sidewalks and roadways. So there are monies that are set aside on that. It helps if the residents ask for specific projects, because it supports the argument, that yes, people are asking for these items. But if there's a separate road project or a side path project, that needs to be identified. So Ocean Road in particular, where it's not a city road, it's a state road, we really need the residents to say, hey, we want this, because that then gives us the ability to go to city council and say, hey, residents want us to take a stab at doing this. We think it's a good idea, because it is, it is a very fast street. There are a lot of houses down that way, and there is a rail trail that's gonna be built in the next year or so on that. That'd be a great amenity for everybody.
So do we, as a Maple Haven neighborhood, have to come in with another CIP request?
No, because you're already in the CIP, you're already funded. But if you're in the party that thinks Ocean Road is a really good idea, we need you to let the planning department know.
So, that would be second. Just a couple of things to do. Thank you.
Can you speak a little louder so we can hear you back?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just a couple of things. Just a question. What is that multi-use path gonna look like on Route 1?
No idea what it end up looking like. If you go past, there's a short section of multi-use path near.
Where St. James
Vita
used to be.
Cantinas.
Where the church used to be.
Yeah, where the church used to be, near Vita Cantinas going up Constitution. You can see a section of, it's roughly 10 foot
99.
wide, asphalt. It looks like a path.
Okay.
So as developers have been coming into the city for the last 5 or 6 years, we have been requiring them to build these pathways. Because we understand that things happen in geologic time, so we've been pushing the issue.
Just a couple more. Snow removal. Like I said, I've lived there for 15 years, and I'm not throwing stones here at all because we take care of it, but I've never had the city come and remove snow from the sidewalk.
Right, it's not wide enough.
No, they haven't
Yeah.
since 64. They've never been, even this existing sidewalk.
Yeah, the equipment
They've
can't do
never-
those, but the one
But they
front
never
line.
even,
If,
You're correct.
Right,
yeah,
okay,
never
so
seen
just,
Yes.
so you're talking the section down in Nathaniel Drive.
Yeah,
right.
And that's 5.5 foot wide sidewalks.
It's 5 feet wide.
5 feet, yeah.
Yep.
But it's
But
pretty far.
what you guys said in the spring was because there's no continuity from town to us.
Yeah.
They can't get the equipment, they're not gonna truck a snow thrower down there to do 800 feet of road and then truck it back up.
Yeah, depending upon the timing, how much work we have going on, we can get sidewalk coverage down to that end. We have a section of sidewalk on Banfield Road now, so there's more impetus to get it down that way. So it may be a day or 2, 3, depending upon, what we do is we start with the highest population of pedestrians, safe routes to schools. Those are the things we start with, and then we work our way up. But we do pick up we would pick up sidewalks out there. It would not be immediately, but it would eventually get.
And I wasn't throwing stones, please don't take it.
No, I understand.
For perspective,
Yep.
that's all. And last thing is, I read a DOT study today, and the Hampshire DOT study on crosswalks.
Yeah.
And again, just for perspective, they are not a panacea. In fact, the data shows that they don't improve safety at all, because it gives people a false sense of security that, hey, there's a crosswalk here, I'm gonna cross. So let's
Yeah.
just be careful.
Well, Eric and I
The
were
data was
talking about that
amazing.
today. The way you gotta look at crosswalks is that when you see a crosswalk, it's not a shield. It's not magic carpet. Cars hurt. What it means is that, what it should mean, is that a traffic engineer has looked at it, studied it, and has agreed that this is the safest place to cross. That's what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything other than that.
Just for perspective, the data shows over 10,000 average daily cars. Over 10,000, which I don't think Ocean Road would be, but I really have no idea. The crashes, which is a vehicle hitting a pedestrian, is the same, whether it's a crosswalk there or not. So it really does give a false sense of security. So be careful with the crosswalk. And last question, I promise.
We can come back to you.
Thank you, guys.
This man with the green shirt behind you is very, very patient.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
So I have a design question and a comment.
okay?
So for design, so we're on the corner of Sudan, so, I
Which
think
corner?
one of the,
There are many corners.
also off Ocean Road. So it'll be one of the, I think it's one of the houses that will be impacted by the sidewalk to the proposal of the crosswalk.
Yeah.
So both me and the house closer to Ocean, we both have fences. Are we gonna lose those fences? Or
No,
not?
we would build a sidewalk basically where it is, except up, so it doesn't fill with water, but in the same spot.
So then, just a second comment, I think that the debate between North and South could possibly begin, but I think what Sarah said about it being just based on the impact that it has resonates with us, because we're gonna lose parking space because we park on that grass, so it's gonna force our cars into the road more. We're gonna lose driveway space by that as well. And yeah, it's just kind of a process.
I don't think there's a driveway on
We all
this.
park on the grass,
On
so
the-
it's
yeah,
gonna make
on
it
the house.
unsafe for all these people. If you go in Maple
The
Leaf.
sidewalk that we're gonna put in, this particular sidewalk, right, there's a 3-foot sidewalk there now, so it'll be 2 feet wider.
Sure, but the cars can't park.
Cars can't park in the
Yes,
grass.
so it's gonna push this. It's gonna be pushed, right? So.
No, I don't know.
Rain, so it doesn't.
So will we park?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just, if we're talking about safety for traveling on the sidewalk makes sense, but if we're limiting the size of the road, if we're pushing more cars on that, into the small space. So I'm not sure.
That's true. That's true. And there's opposing views to that because there are many studies that say that when you give traffic less room, cars slow down. Which is one of the reasons why in a lot of the streets downtown, you've seen that even Islington Street is smaller than it used to be. We did it on purpose so that cars would slow down. So I understand, but they fly because it's wide open. Understand? So, and I'm not suggesting that you put your car out there as a shield to slow traffic down. But the result is that if the road is a little smaller, people do go a little slower. And it is safer in general.
If you're on the
Understand?
sidewalk, but it's pushing all our children who use wheels to get everywhere
Yeah,
further into traffic that is just narrowed, and that's everybody with kids, north and south, the kids don't walk, they bike, they scooter, I see a kid on rollerblades every other day. I mean, they're getting pushed further into traffic. And I agree, every study says sidewalks are safer for pedestrians. There's a reason that wheels usually are illegal on sidewalks. And if you start doing just a walkthrough, you realize every kid under the age of 18, I'm sorry, the 20-year-olds, they're on wheels. And I don't want my 5-year-old, she's currently allowed to bike somewhat freely to some neighbors' houses, now playing in traffic because it's narrowed that much. And I can say that there is a consensus of parents, and that's, I'm walking around and part of what I'm hearing is, yeah, that sounds great for other people, but I don't think I'd use it. And then I'm asking parents, because if we're talking about safety, the big thing is kids. And as a parent, I've been trying to ask a lot of other parents, how do you feel? Do you think your kid on a scooter should be on the sidewalk? Well, no, because that's not safe either. The cracks just, that doesn't work so well. There's a problem with then narrowing it because we are a neighborhood that's, there are kids everywhere. My kid is on a school bus with 1 million kids this year. And next year it's gonna exponentially grow in the next year. That's part of the joy of our neighborhood is we have, you know, I have a neighbor who's on their 4th generation and I have a 5-year-old. So that's part of the joy of our neighborhood. Let's not push these kids on wheels further into traffic. And you're gonna have to be, especially in places like Winchester, we have a curb. I can't park with 2 wheels in the grass. You've just narrowed Winchester that much more. No matter what the plan is on Winchester, right now, everybody tries to get as far off as they can. so that everybody walking 5 dogs and 2 cats and all the conversations that we all have standing in the middle of the street. But part of the joy is I can walk around it and I have random conversations with random people standing in the middle of the street and none of us feel unsafe.
So Sarah, so we're not proposing to do anything at this time. So let's focus on, you know, what we're talking about this evening. And you've been very clear what the concerns are. We've heard it very clearly.
She's speaking for a lot of us.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You
So
speak
thank
for it, you say it as well.
Well, I
And we've
echo
heard-
what she says. My name is Jody and I live at 45 Winchester.
That's
I
great,
don't
Jody.
like having my neighbors hushed. I think she's speaking for a lot of us.
I'm
Thank
not-
you.
I appreciate that, and I'm not hushing anybody. I've heard the perspective, I need to hear other folks' perspectives as well, and we're not building sidewalks down in that area.
I
That's- we're
understand
not
what
doing
you
that.
are doing. I hear you.
Okay, well, then let's have a
Follow
discussion
along.
about this.
But I think
We are.
you're gonna find a consensus, you're already walking with your current plans. And everybody says, yes, we want the crosswalk, and there's consensus. If you want me to walk to every house, I'll walk down to every house. You already have consensus. of what you're doing.
we are
So then the
actually,
next question is now what do? Do you go with plan 1, 2, 3, or 4?
no, Sarah, what
Is it-
we're saying right now is that we're moving forward with what we presented here.
Right.
You all make a decision on how you'd like to move past. We are not saying anything beyond that. This is great dialogue you have right now within your neighborhood. And if you need to bifurcate the neighborhood so that it's, you know, north and south, and that's fine. But we need to understand when you get consensus, what you'd like to do. We have consensus right now about what we're gonna do. We're moving forward with this. So we just, in bringing it up, saying you need to have, if you want sidewalks elsewhere, then you need to come up with a consensus and relay that information to us. But right now, we clearly understand that there's no consensus on it. So we are moving forward what we have consensus on, and that's what we're talking about tonight. Mr. Gill?
You're first, then we're next, okay?
This begin, Larry Chines. So I'm Peter Thompson, John, the state representative. I represent Maple Haven and Hannah. And both of those neighborhoods are looking at the same problem, sidewalks. And it's not an easy consensus to come to because, like you just heard, everybody has a different location, occupation, family, organization. But I would just ask everyone to think about the fact that what David was saying about the state moving really slowly. As a state rep, I can assure you that's very true. So if in fact you're getting any money from the state and we dawdle and can't come to a consensus, you're gonna lose the money. No question about it, because there are people out there who will grab that money as soon as they can. Now, the other part is, look, a lot of people would say, maybe, and I've heard this said by people, what has posterity ever done for me? Well, a lot of our neighborhoods, and Wayne Manor, for example, it's been there a long time, Maple Haven as well. The sidewalk issue, those trees that were initially planted there by somebody were usually not designed to avoid damaging sidewalks. That was not a thinking at the time. So wouldn't it make a lot of sense for us to invest in something permanent for the long term, even though it might offer a little sacrifice for each of us? And I don't live there, so you know, I'm not telling you to do it. But it is an issue that you've got to invest in your neighborhoods, make it better. Your home values will increase because of it. Sidewalks there, your home is more valuable. So there's a lot of benefits to this. And while I agree and need consensus, I would say you get that consensus pretty quickly if you want the money. If you don't want to do anything, that's fine. That's all I want to say.
So just to clarify, there are no state funds involved in this work. So I appreciate what you're saying in terms of the Route 1 discussions, that's accurate. But so, let's.
Go ahead.
So not Rick Udar, 32 Marriott. Not to have a pun here, but are like speed tables, are they tabled like on the south side of our neighborhood? Like because you did a study that said it wasn't.
We did a study, we had most people obeying the speed limit or close to it. We had one really crazy variant that we saw. Other than that, we generally 50 percentile was
But if there's a consensus, could we still move forward with speed tables? Our neighborhood consensus, is that part of the thing? And I'm only saying this because I have an 8-year-old. There is 25 kids that play on their bikes, and yes, sidewalks are great. But they're gonna be riding their bikes in the road still.
Yeah.
And even I remember when you guys put that thing up down in Winchester, well, we can get one on the other side of the neighborhood. And we have a massive straightaway there as well, that people fly. I live right on the corner, I see them right to past my house.
Which section are you talking about?
I'm on the corner, like you go down Marriott, like the corner and straight away.
Marriott goes everywhere. It's
The other side,
Suzanne of the side.
the parallel of the parallel.
Okay.
On the other side.
Yes.
Because I mean, I would like a speed study over there too, kind of see, because we have the same issue that Winchester had in with people just flying down that straightaway. And yes, there's a stop sign where Nathaniel comes out, where a lot of people don't stop. But we have 1 million kids in our neighborhood now, and that's the beauty. And I brag to my friends of how great it is that it's old school. I don't do play dates. Go to your friend's house, knock on your friend's door.
Right.
And I want, like what John was Mr. O'Leary was saying there, that safety piece, when I know people are flying in this neighborhood, regardless of your study, we look out our windows and people are flying, and sidewalks are great, and, you know, but I think the speed table should be looked at a little bit more.
Can certainly do that. So the
Other
mechanism
than
to do
just
that,
on the
the
Suzanne.
mechanism to do that
Okay.
is that, ask the traffic safety committee to look at it.
By bringing it up, well.
Yeah,
we,
and then we'll do it, and then we'll do a speed study,
yeah, we'll do a speed study here.
and then we can hear it at the traffic safety. Okay, you were next. Yep.
I'm Debbie. I live at 37 Suzanne. If you come in off Lafayette Road, I'm that corner lot.
Okay.
I see the speeding. I know you say there isn't, but there is. I spend a lot of time outside. I don't know. Okay, I lived there since the early 90s. I rarely see people using sidewalks. And the few that do, I can tell you who they are. They're just walking their dogs. A lot of them don't pick up after their dogs. Some do. I'm not putting the fingers at anybody. Last thing I want to do is be surprised when I'm on my front lawn. Now you say 5-foot sidewalks. I'm 5'3". Are you saying that tarred part's gonna be 5 feet? Plus you got the grass for the road? Or are you incorporating all that?
You said you're on the Suzanne part.
I'm in the entrance of Suzanne.
Behind, like,
If you come in from
Yes.
the DB right when you make that left.
so right where the speed table.
You come in off
Yes.
Lafayette Road,
Yeah.
you go straight ahead.
So I didn't
That's
say there wasn't a speeding problem there. I actually said there was. And that there's a speed table going.
okay. I'm talking about, you've got a 5-foot sidewalk.
We're not putting a sidewalk there in this phase. We're not.
Eventually you will, so I'm just.
Only if
looking
there's
at-
consensus.
Okay,
That's what we said.
But is the 5 foot?
that's
include-
pretty wide.
is
I
it
don't
just the
see
pavement or
5-foot
does it
sidewalk.
include the
I mean, you're in the public works building. Sidewalk tractors are here. You can measure them. They're almost 5 feet wide and you have to accommodate.
We don't have
guys living
sidewalk.
up-
They come in off Lafayette Road and they just beeline and dump all that snow in front of my house.
We don't have sidewalk.
Yeah.
If we had sidewalks, the town would
We have a lot of side conversations going on. That's one person, speed at a time. Yeah, excuse me. It's directed to the group. Let's not have side conversations. Let's try to have one conversation so we can keep track.
You're still going in such a way that you don't dump
Everybody's
snow on the
snow
sidewalk.
blowers or plows, okay? You got Route 1, they're coming in with their big plows and I swear to God, they laugh if I'm out there. I leave at 4:15 in the morning to go to work.
You have a lot of
And they-
pavement outside your driveway.
Yeah, but they
That's
dump it all
why
in
you
front of my
have,
house.
that's why, let you know.
Yeah.
I plowed your neighborhood for many years.
I've seen you.
I've been out there in blizzard after
Yeah.
blizzard after blizzard.
And I thank you.
Thank
But you leave
But-
the snowbank so high that I come out of my driveway and I
understand.
can't see. And the
But the
road.
reason why you have so much snow is literally because where you live, because there's so much pavement.
So this is a good
Just so
discussion
you know.
offline.
We're not doing it.
We're not talking about snow removal at the moment.
Obviously, I'm not for the sidewalks. so-
Well, that's fine, but if you have concerns about the stone removal, let's,
Yeah,
reach out,
I
we can
just-
talk about that
Everybody
further.
else is talking
But
about
that's
it.
Hi,
Go
I
ahead.
just have a question. I know initially it was proposed as a 5 foot sidewalk. Is there at all a chance that it could be proposed as the current footprint of the sidewalk that exists now. That would just be replaced with something that is not dilapidated, would not affect anyone's property as is. Is that at all a chance? Would that be considered?
No,
Why?
because we're responsible for, when we put sidewalks in, and I know folks down on the other end, you know, they don't get it plowed, but we are responsible for plowing. We plow with a snow plow that is wider than the existing sidewalks, so we would not be able to do that. So when we're doing, we're trying to make things consistent when we can. Make it so that we can maintain it, so, you know, if we put new sidewalks out there, we're gonna be plowing. You know, it's not, we're not gonna leave you down there without a plowed sidewalk after we invest.
So we won't be able to park. So when my 91-year-old dad comes to visit, he's not gonna be able to park on that grass section. of the Sidewalk, he'll be in the street.
Will there still be some of the devil's strip, which is that
Yes,
patch of grass,
Yes.
right? There still will be some of it
Yes.
left over.
yes.
But-
No, we're having.
Yeah, but I mean, you really shouldn't be parking on the grass anyway. You should park on the street if you're parking anyway. You can still have some of that grass.
Yeah,
People, yeah, I understand that, but I mean, you technically park anywhere around it.
I can't park in this. If I park on the street, it makes it one parking for them. And then when you have snow
So,
and they
so if
plow
you-
it up over, then we can't, there's no way to put the snow for the, sidewalk.
So this is a good dialogue relative to street designs and stuff like that, but let's focus back on, you know, this particular proposal we're doing right now. And I guarantee you, we're gonna be having additional meetings in the future to have further discussion about your neighborhoods, so.
So what is it that you're asking for? Because I like this idea of need a goal. The goal right now.
They wanted to tell us about this.
What is it that you're asking of the residents? Because it seems like you want feedback, but then it's not the right feedback. So if you had one question to ask everybody sitting here, what is that question?
What we presented.
Yep.
Was the crosswalk, a short section of sidewalk, and two speed.
So do you need a
tables.
show of hands versus by us and everybody there?
No, we
Like-
have consensus.
Okay.
So
So then,
we are presenting that to
and
you.
that's what I'm saying. So then your second question to us is what?
We don't have a second
Go
question.
figure it out if you want to do something. That's what I'm saying.
Sarah, how about you and I tax this together? Okay, we can find whatever consensus it is. I'm pretty neutral on it.
Yep.
You know, what things I want sidewalks, I'm pretty neutral on it. Doesn't affect me. It's fine.
Well, and this
So
is
what I'm saying,
something.
North influences, North and South, let's get together, let's work together, you and I, we'll tag team the neighborhood, we'll get very specific consensus, then we will bring it back to DPW, so it's not this. I feel like we're in the Royal Rumble a little bit, we're all talking to each other, you know, we all think, just because you want sidewalks, you don't care about my I think we all want, we'll figure out what the consensus is, because I know that, because you know, there's 6 neighbors of mine that are not here tonight who adamantly want sidewalks. So I think what we need to do is literally, you and I, if we want to be tag teams, we can go and we can hit every single door and then we can build a consensus.
Which has already been done.
Yes,
That was done.
But John,
Right, the
that
second.
wasn't the fact. I think if you are very clear, like, I know, obviously your daughter did that, but to be
She
very,
went door to door.
I know.
to all the neighbors.
well, she didn't go, but my point is, if you hit every neighbor, be very clear.
are you willing to lose 5 feet of your yard?
No, yeah, right.
I know, I'm not out of.
I'm just saying, you want sidewalks,
Obscene.
But
Yeah,
at
you're
the
not
end of the day,
yes, that's how it should be.
excuse me, Joe, at the end of the day, it's not whether you lose 5 feet. The question is it more important to have that 5 feet or make things safe? That, at the end of the day, that's what you're dealing with, in my mind.
You are safe. You are safe.
And I,
You
what
are
I,
safe. You are safe. That 5 feet, take it away.
well,
Take it off my back.
no,
So we're not, none of that grass is yours, all of that grass is the
But
state.
it's so we want to prevent this fighting of getting it to the 3rd meeting where nothing is being resolved.
So I'm with you on that and I will do that, but this is, I had emailed Peter, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. And I had said, look, part of the problem is if you and I go door to door, right? We're not them, right? DPW sits there because we pay them because they're good at their job, right? So if somebody says, well, I have a question, can we do this? I'm gonna sit there and say, I have no idea.
And I'm gonna say, I'm with you and I go
I don't
so,
build
but
sidewalks.
6 days, 5 days a week, and I can relay that question directly.
But here's
and
what I
get it back
asked
to you.
for before, was instead of another one of these meetings, we've had a roundtable discussion. Hey, she had a question, can we repave what we have? That's been asked a million times for the past few months, and there hasn't been a forum to go through somebody and truly get that answered and talk it through and not have an acrimonious relationship between us and the city. We're having meeting after meeting because it's the city up there, an elected official, and residents here, and we should not be. Well, yes, but
It's a dual role.
yeah, I understand that. And so we need to, and my feeling after all this is said and done, the city needs a postmortem on what happened in this neighborhood to prevent this happening as the next neighborhood. And I understand that it's.
So what I'm saying is that is something that's in process, is that we as a city are trying to figure out how do we determine what 70%, consensus is.
But some of it in these smaller neighborhoods needs to be a more informal roundtable, not there's a presenter. Even the way you set up a room makes a difference, and have it so that if she or somebody else has a question, because I have had a lot of questions about, can we do this, and show the maps and talk to people. I live here and how is it gonna impact me? Because there's a lot of people who say, I like the idea, but they haven't stared at the map, or I like the idea of it, right? And you have a discussion.
What you're describing is what is what the neighborhood committees do. And they do it monthly, so maybe again, we get consensus, and then they are a great forum that we can talk it out as a neighborhood. And then as a neighborhood, we get that consensus and we bring it to them.
But this kind of thing where we have the experts.
I understand, but
Why aren't we picking the
we
brain
can't-
for it in terms of options given? And it's because we're having meeting after meeting after meeting and not truly getting it.
But I think it's hard for anyone to hire and got my question.
This is great. The thing is, and you all need to understand, we do not have an infinite amount of time. We have other responsibilities, and we appreciate, we have these meetings, we've gotten a lot of feedback. We come, and people ask questions and we answer questions. So we understand you want that participation, and that's what these meetings are for. You need to understand, though, we also have, the rest of the city that we have to maintain. We have all the other things that we do day to day, so we don't have an infinite amount of time. We hope that we get clear feedback from people. When we bring these things forward, we make modifications, and that's what happens. And then we finalize the design and we present that. There is not clear consensus here. Typically, we get clear consensus after a couple meetings. It's typical. We do this all the time. And for whatever reason, there's differences of opinion, and it may be because North and South should not be commingled, because they're very different movements of traffic and people. And so maybe what we should do is we should look at treating the two neighborhoods separately, or the two sections of the neighborhood separately, and there could be an easier way of getting some consensus. So, but to point out and say that we do not listen and we're not being responsive and we're not providing answers is not an accurate reflection of what's happening. So I need to stand up for that. And really, we just need to dial it down a little bit. We will get to the end and get a product that you guys want. We have a portion of something that you are interested in. We are moving forward with that. So there is progress being made. It will take time. Yes, sir.
So just a question about north versus south. So seriously, so just a question about just how we split the neighborhood up, like from a design standpoint, does that make sense to really split them up? Like,
Yes,
north,
because Ocean Road is a dividing line. It's a very different, traffic flow. You don't have crosscut. It's not one big neighborhood. It is two separate sections that are connected.
And
So
it makes sense
it
to
is,
separate them because you've already got the connector, the one point that's in common is done.
But isn't that more of a reason to make them the same if we're trying to put a crosswalk there to connect the neighborhoods together? Wouldn't it make sense to either?
what I'm looking at too is that if you break it into two sections, it's easier to get consensus with two smaller groups. And then that way you're not trying to satisfy one person over here that is against sidewalks. One person over here that is for sidewalks. You have a larger group on one side that says, yes, sidewalks are acceptable, let's make that happen. Another group over here saying, no, sidewalks are not acceptable. We don't want that there. So they were able to come to consensus on those two separate areas. So that would be nice to be able to do. But we are not forcing this on you. You all need to decide how you're going to do this. And if you're willing to come to the table and have discussion, that's fine. But oftentimes we feel battered, we feel badgered, And we don't feel like it's really something that's a collaborative approach. We feel like it's confrontational. We don't want that.
And we appreciate your resilience.
We want you guys to be included in the discussion. We know it's important, and it's challenging for us to be able to take the time to do that, but it's worth the time spent. So we are willing, we will do that, and we'll continue to have these meetings, and I appreciate the assistant mayor stepping into the fray and being the head of this committee. Sarah's co-chair. So, but I want to dial it down, because I feel like everybody's starting to get linked up. This is positive. The neighborhood's talking to each other, we're moving forward with this, and we're making some progress. It's gonna take time.
I'll only say one thing in response is that I agree. Part of it, this is a waste of your time. Have meeting after meeting. Instead of a separate forum where more gets done quicker. And I think the forum of this citywide, or maybe just here, you need to change something. Because if you keep getting the same results, it's probably doing the wrong thing. This is a waste of your time. I'm sorry, this is, city employees should not be going after.
I think it's a really good suggestion. I think it's a suggestion. I think probably the next meeting, obviously we have things laid out, and probably as a group, you guys do first, and then we can sit down and have that approach.
And that's what I had asked for months ago.
So,
I suggested for a different way of doing this, and we're just back to the same thing.
Right.
Hi, I just wanted to know, I just want to say, I don't think this is a waste of time for me, because I actually didn't see, I learned a lot from your presentation. I learned about what we are going ahead with at this point. So all of those things, we don't have to vote on, those are just things that are going ahead from the presentation. I have learned about that. Learned that we definitely have to work on our consistency. I have learned that we're going to have a committee. Now, the things that I think that I don't know yet, or maybe the helpful to move the process a little bit on from where we're at, is maybe to define when would you like consensus in terms of is there a time? And just like how would you define consensus in terms of numbers? If you look at the number of people in the neighborhood, and then we have to have a certain percentage there, is that what you would need? So that we could actually say, yes, we do have consensus, or no, we don't. And could we go as a committee, if there is a neighborhood committee, we separate it into north and south, we agree consensus on both sides, put them together, but agree consensus on just one side, we could go forward with consensus there.
yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Typically, we use 70 or 75% of the households. So not, if you have 5 people in a household, that's not 5 votes, it's one household, one vote. So
Like
it's,
3 kids will go.
yeah, so we try for that. Now, obviously, if you're 74, but it's a clear direction that there's support. I like your suggestion of if you get 75% on one side of the neighborhood, and less on the other side, that's consensus, maybe move forward on that. And the north side does have the playground, so that's, a nice thing to do. Timeframe consensus really is open-ended because, well, okay, so we'll give you a deadline. September 30th. Now, it really is a cycle, it's really a cycle, so every year we go through the CIP process. So, the CIP process from a public input side is finishing up, I think, on October 15th. I know that it says September 30th, but it may be October 15th, but the form says September 30th. But that just because you don't get it in this deadline doesn't mean it doesn't get next year cycle. And there are some monies that we already have been planning to work here. So there are some monies available to someone, whether it's all the work that people want, may not be. So.
So the Ocean Road part, you said we ain't fill in form. Is it one person fills it out and then moves through?
The
Or
more-
is it
the
like
more
we get
the
50 people
better.
doing
We
it? Let's unite on one issue.
So, but just be cautious, Ocean Road is a state road. The right of way is not real wide. So it's not a simple slam dunk, we get the money and make it happen. I think, getting consensus will help because then we can go to the state and real desire to make the state. The state's investing in a rail trail that's, supposedly gonna be in construction next year. So it's coming quickly, you know, so that's really good. I'm sorry, John had his hand up first. And then-
Yeah, just to clarify something, and I don't know the answer, but the proposal for the sidewalks, you know, what does the city control as far as the right of way is concerned? And
On Ocean
what,
Road?
in the neighborhood. In other words, we've heard the question, I believe that you're taking 5 feet of my land or something like that. Is it, I know it's not an easy answer, but when you come to the end of the pavement, you have your paved road and you have, in effect, the front lawn. What, is that, is the right of way owned by the city?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
so-
here's a great example, John. The dash lines are the right of way. The asphalt.
And that's
existing
surveyed
asphalt's
from a
here.
land survey.
So that, all of that land right there is city right of way.
So if I can just address the issue here, I know that there's an emotional and, aspect to it. But from a legal perspective, legal doesn't answer all the questions. But the land in question that they're talking about is actually owned by the city and not by the landowners.
I'm not sure if that's correct in terms of ownership.
Maple Haven.
Let's do ownership.
In Maple Haven, there's fee ownership, and in general, not true of Winchester, as we've all been through quite a bit tonight. But in general, in Maple Haven, there's about this much room on the backside of the asphalt sidewalk. That is where the property line actually is. So the sidewalk that they're out there is in the right of way. The grass strip between the sidewalk and the road is in the right of way. Of course, the roads are in the right of way. In this particular spot, Winchester Street was built, I want to use a technical term, willy-nilly. They didn't actually build the road in the middle of the road, in the middle of the right of way. They kind of blasted it in wherever it was cheaper, and they probably went around some ledge, some utilities, and they said, we'll pave it here. And as long as we're not on anybody's lot, we're good. But because Winchester Street was the first street, and it was like an 8-house subdivision that got added on to it in modern times, if Winchester Street got added on to with 150 houses, there is no way the city would allow that without having the developer build a sidewalk on Winchester Street, so all those people could get out. But we're not, that all happened in the past, we know that. But in general, in Maple Haven, there's about as much room on the sidewalk. That's about where the right of way line is. Now, and it's important to remember that everybody in the city owns the right of way. It's common. It's not the city versus you. It's public land versus private ownership. Okay?
So, but that being said, the city is very cognitive of property owners and the feeling that they have some right to that. and
I'm not discounting that at
So
all.
we're very hesitant to impact folks.
I understand that, but I
And
just
we,
want
and we do not, in fact, tax people on the land where the sidewalk and the grass strip is between the sidewalk and the road. We're not getting taxed on that, we do tax bill, we don't get taxed on that land. So I heard somebody say that too, that doesn't get taxed. It's only the land behind the sidewalk, your house.
So, gentlemen, you had
Fred Butts, I actually live on Ocean Road. I wouldn't have spoken on these other issues, of course, but since Ocean Road is being talked about. Since CMC member Lane actually walked Ocean Road now for 2 years to hand deliver, she might have been bummed out about, but the National Night Out brochure, so we walked every door on Ocean Road twice now. Sidewalks are pretty necessary. Yeah, I mean, to the point like maybe a car mirror, like I think 4 inches from my elbow, more than once. So it'd be great.
It's a little spooky up there. Yeah.
And now it's paved, so it's even faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I'll fill out our form.
Okay, thank you.
So what,
We have one person on. the line.
okay, we actually had a bunch of people on that. Hold on, I'll bring it back to start. Dax,
Dax, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi, we can hear you too.
Okay, my hand's been up for a while.
I know, I'm sorry.
must be tired.
I just wanted to agree, and I know that you guys probably don't want to hear this, but with what Sarah was saying in 26, and I understand that we're in a different place with the north and south side of the neighborhoods, but on the south side, it really does adversely affect a lot of the property. I mean, we have big privacy hedges, an entire row of them. I know our neighbors in 25, it affects, they have beautiful landscaping outside and they've spent a lot of time and effort on doing that. I know it affects Sarah's trees and I was really just raising my hand to stand with everybody on the Winchester side of things. That something different needs to happen, at least on our side of it. And that's all I was saying.
And then I
Okay.
had a question.
Yeah,
Alexis, so you said, oh, we already have consensus and we're gonna go forward with the plan that we have. Which plan is this? Is this just the sidewalks for a little bit? Is that
yeah,
happening
it's
now?
the
That-
sidewalk that's been up on the screen quite a bit tonight. It's basically a little section on Suzanne and one house on Winchester Street, just so we can get people onto and off that crosswalk.
So,
it's that, you can see the
it's-
diagram now on the screen.
yeah, okay, so that,
it
so that,
stops- So it
has-
stops right at that bold black line
mhm,
at the end of the yard at number 163 is what
Yep.
we're proposing. And then you would step onto an asphalt surface and you would walk down the edge of the road from there.
okay, and the proposal says that there's no effect to the other side of the road.
Right, they moved from 20.
Correct. There's no
Okay.
change to the other side of the road.
And so I would just like some clarification. Did we make that a consensus already and that's what's going to happen? Or are we still getting the feedback on that?
We believe we have good enough consensus that we're moving forward with this plan.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
I know there was a couple other hands up there, but
But
they
they put them down.
flipped down. I don't know whether their questions got answered or whether they're still interested.
Good. Okay, good.
Oh, Kevin,
Huh?
Kevin here. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hey, this is Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Kevin.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. I live on 24 Suzanne. So I guess, is that the north side? I'm trying to figure out the
That's
the
north.
neighborhood
Yeah.
names. All right. So thanks for the presentation. Really helpful to get an idea of what's happening. I wasn't aware of the first few meetings earlier in the spring. So I just wanted to share, a little bit in terms of the process and moving forward. I know that this meeting really was just to let us know that you're moving forward with the crosswalk, which across the ocean, which I think is great. But in terms of the process moving forward, I still haven't actually seen all of these documents. I think it would be great if people are thinking about trying to get consensus to actually be putting the proposals and the plans in everyone's mailboxes. So that would be really great. I also didn't hear anybody just in terms of raising issues that will be discussed in the future, not trying to discuss them right now, but nobody has talked about the tree situation really. Older trees that we have are not the same as newer trees and they provide different shade. There's different impacts on the environment. So I just wanted to raise that too. And really just in terms of if you really are trying to get consensus from the neighborhood, we need, better information in terms of the plans that people need to be informed and have actual documentation to be able to look at when we're thinking about what we're being asked to talk about and vote on.
So,
And the last thing I
Kevin,
wanted
we
to say,
can add the past plans
that's
to-
what-
oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, let me just add one last thing and then I'm
Okay,
done, I
yeah.
promise. Just one last thing. People have been talking about, north versus south and how it's a very different situation. And there was sort of an implication that there would, easily be consensus on the north side. And I just want to, I'm just sort of learning. No, I'm just learning about this for the first time. So I'm not sure if everyone has really been filled in completely. So I'm not sure that's a safe assumption to make. I know when I drive on Simmons, I'm on Suzanne right at the corner, but when I drive on Simmons, there's a lot of kids playing out there. So there are a lot of kids on this side of the neighborhood too. And there's also a lot of cars parked on the grass there. If you're talking about a change that's gonna, push cars onto the street, then you're talking about a lot of kids that are coming out across the street when there's cars. So, people are bringing up safety as sort of the core concern. There's different ways to think about that too, because I've also lived in places where there's a lot of cars on the street, even very narrow streets. You can't see through cars. You can't see when kids are coming out from between them. So just, I think a lot of other things for people to talk about too, but I do want the trees to be talked about as we move forward. And that's it. Thanks for putting this together today. I actually did find it helpful. And thanks to Sarah for letting us know that this meeting was happening.
Okay, Kevin, just so you know, we did talk about trees a lot in the first two meetings. So I know you weren't participating in that, but we did. That's why we didn't bring them up tonight, really, because we've already talked about them quite a bit. We can post the prior plans online as prior plans, just for discussion points. Okay.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Related to back to the crosswalk, you gotta go to DOT.
Yes.
Confidence factor in them saying yes, because I know it is pretty close to an existing signal and crosswalk on Route 1 in Ocean. And if they say no, are the sidewalks off, the ones you proposed tonight? They would not.
They would be, but I think our confidence level is fairly high. I would say we're at 80% or better.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask just one clarifying question, just in terms of the proposal for tonight. Is it consensus for tearing up the sidewalks, the old sidewalks at this point? Is that part of consensus?
The sidewalks need to be removed, even if we replace them.
Yes.
So removing them now is not felt to be wasted money.
No, yeah.
So that's part of.
So yes, remove existing sidewalks.
Yeah, but I'm not speaking towards consensus on it.
No, I'm not saying.
I don't know if there's a huge consensus on that, but
I think that's the only thing you're gonna get consensus on. Regardless of what happens after, what's there needs to go. And I don't think anybody's gonna say, no, I want my crappy sidewalks.
But, so that is something that's definitely.
Yes, part of the project that's gonna happen next year. Yes.
Okay.
Yep, nothing's gonna happen before.
So if you get into replacing the sidewalks, the ones that are gonna get torn up, are you tied to ADA requirements? That gets you into
You build anything new, you're required. Cool. Anybody else?
All right, so this is not life changing, but if you do pull up those sidewalks and it takes 2 years to put sidewalks in, we just have ditches in our front yards.
No, we will.
put loans.
We're gonna remove the asphalt, shake off all the dirt from top. Right, a little grassy now will be good.
One last question. That grass strip, you guys mow it?
No.
So. If there's desire, I mean, I've heard a lot of folks talking about master planning the neighborhood, thinking about other things other than just sidewalks. The reason that there wasn't a huge facilitated program on this was a sidewalk project only. It was not, let's revision all the function of the neighborhood, all the other things, so that's how this happened. If you all are looking for like, let's have a master plan for neighborhoods, you need to kind of start that process, and I would encourage you to work through the neighborhood committee. And you have the ward forum coming up next week. 28. And so, you know, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of the similar feedback at that time. You know, there's never been a discussion to say, let's do a visioning for Maple Haven. That's been brought to us. Maybe there has been internally for you all, but there's, you know, it really has been brought forward to say, hey, you know, like Islington Creek, Donna area, the neighborhoods came and said, hey, we want to completely revitalize this. We want a whole thing. And it was a multi-year program put together to do that. There was less meetings than we had for this to get forward on it, but it was driven by the neighborhood saying they wanted to do that. If you all are saying you want to have some master plan revision of your neighborhood, I would encourage you to put that in the CIP to say that you would like that done. And, you know, there'd be seed money put down, and then there'd be a professional process done to say, what is that vision for your neighborhood? And if there needs to be major changes, if there's not. But so we're not going to resolve any of this right now, but I'm just like, that's the process. So I'm sorry. Right.
I just had a question about the speed tables. At the last meeting, it was going to be at the beginning and at the exit by Ocean Road. And then possibly one where the second one you have now on.
They never said the Suzanne
Yeah.
little
yeah.
light by, it was back on the first corner and then out.
Yeah, right, I'm showing that up here right now.
The original one
Originally
was
So there's one right up here. Yeah, but the desire, what we got for feedback was people felt it'd be better towards the entrance.
Right, the entrance and the exit,
Right, that's pretty
No,
much, you know, with
not
Sorry,
halfway
the-
through.
The original one that we presented had
Was
a
there.
there and here. That-
Right, and then they changed it to the front, and then there was talk about having it at the Suzanne Ocean Road exit. And possibly one where you
I
have.
don't recall
balance.
that discussion. I remember one here and I remember one here, but so the idea of having one towards the center was to break up, you know, if you have just one on either end, people will zoom between.
It was suggested, and then someone said, do you want to penalize the neighborhood by putting the one in the entrance and the exit?
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and no, it wouldn't, because it wouldn't make any sense, because you have to slow down.
Right, but you're, so it's just your neighbors, it's your neighbors,
Zoom around the backside,
but your neighbors that we're talking about.
but
So
I'm
you're
gonna
going
tell
through-
you, instead of going that way, they're gonna take a left and they're gonna zoom around Ocean Road, and not Ocean Road, Suzanne, come up Simons, and they're gonna have that one at the front.
Well, it wouldn't be any faster.
No, they-
So realistically.
But they're gonna go faster. They do, people avoid that just to avoid the speed bump, and if there's a way they can get one and zoom
Do they
around the
cut
backside.
through to make it faster to avoid the
But
light?
they
Yeah,
come
they're
down
just trying to
Simons
avoid the
Road.
light.
I know, but no, they come zooming down Simons Road too,
I realize they do, but
and that's it's.
this is not to do with anything on Simons or anything on Wallace or anything on the backside of Suzanne. It's just to try to slow people down that are
From
using
the
it as a cut.
entrance and the exit. Right.
So if I go through a neighborhood to try to cut 6 seconds off the light time, I'm not gonna add 19 seconds to get around the whole neighborhood.
It won't take. It's quick.
So,
I grew up right where I am now, and they find a way.
so, you know, what we can do, let's build and measure, you know, we can get these built and then see if additional. It's right. So, I'm sorry, there's another hand back there.
Yeah, just to add to the speed table thing, so people are gonna do what they're gonna do, the entire neighborhood can't be speed tables.
Right.
The way it is makes sense to me, because I live right there on Suzanne, and where the one is in the middle of the road, that's where children are playing every single day, that's where kids are playing. So what would happen if it went to the other exit over there by where I live, they go to the speed table, they get to that longer stretch of road, and they fly, and that's where the kids are.
But it's a curve.
So,
It's a curve, so
So,
it's
and that's what it
adds.
is.
Right.
So that's why.
Can they even reply?
The speed table.
Oh, I
It's
so,
like playing
we can-
it's speed table there to slow people down there. They have
Right.
the option to speed towards that tiny little stretch.
We- yeah, John,
I just want to make one point, you know, they talked about having a vision and having getting something done. I want you to know that it has happened. This lady here put the playgrounds together. Susan did all kinds of work going around the neighborhood, getting people involved, and that's why we have the playground. So it has happened before.
Great. All right, well. Thank you for your thoughts.
Is there a reason not to do 3? Because that stop sign on the corner, well, so people fly for that, so I agree that.
Which stop sign?
It makes sense. The stop sign on Suzanne, that one right there. People fly through that at 30 miles an hour, no stop. My office spread, I look at that stop sign all day and people blow through it. It's scary.
We can look at a third one.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah, we'll look at a third one. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. Look forward to our next opportunity. Yeah.
I have to say,